All right, y'all, before we start, because some of y'all be tripping, under the advice of counsel, I got to add that the views, thoughts, opinions that are expressed on this podcast are mine and mine alone. They do not represent my employer. All right, let's go.
Because I was like, damn, do we really want to get into this discussion? Because if we get into this discussion right here, y'all.
What's up, y'all? We are back for another episode of Ridgemont4'sFinest-The Podcast. And today we have a very, very, very special episode. I ain't gonna lie, y'all, this one's gonna be kind of tough for me to do because this is a topic that is very prevalent, more prevalent than it needs to be, especially in the school system, but definitely one that we need to talk about because parents need to be aware of everything that's going on with this topic. So today we're talking about mental health and the rise in school-age suicides and suicides in young adults. So I have today here two very, very close friends, almost like family, mental health therapists. I got Dr. Smith. Good morning.
Good morning.
And I got Miss Weaver. Also, I got two mental health therapists, experts in this field. And y'all, today I'm going to kind of let them do a lot of the talking because this is their lane. And I am just here to absorb as a mom, as a teacher, what I can do to make sure that I'm looking out for the signs in my own children and the students that I teach every day. So let's start with looking at the broader picture. In recent years, there has been a concerning increase in suicide rates among school-age children and young adults. Dr. Smith, can you share some stats with us?
Absolutely. So what we're noticing that it's a trend in the increase in suicide amongst young adults as well as adolescent students. So what that looks like is suicide in our younger adults is the third leading cause of death among that age group between the ages of 14 and 18 years old. In 2021, we identified that Black female students had a higher risk of suicide ideation as well as attempts. When you look at students across the board, we're noticing there's an increase across the board, but we're noticing it primarily in our minority students. When you're looking at adults, we're looking at suicide being the 11th leading cause of death among young adults as a whole. So when we're looking at the trend, we're seeing that our adolescent students are struggling, but then if they're not equipped with the appropriate coping skills as they transition into younger adults, they're still transitioning in that direction to be impacted. And ultimately, many of them are either attempting or actually completing suicide.
So last week we had an episode where we talked about self-harm and suicide ideations. And one of the mental health therapists that we had on there was like, hold on, full stop. We got to make sure that there's a clear line that we draw between self-harm and suicidal ideations. And of course, I didn't know. I'm thinking it's kind of all one and the same. And she's like, no, absolutely not. So can you explain quickly the difference between Ms. Weaver's self-harm and suicidal ideation?
Okay, definitely. Self-harm can be a maladaptive coping strategy that individuals use. So let's say if they're dealing with stress, they may participate in cutting or even picking or hair pulling because they're trying to adjust to the stress. And so, again, they're using it as a coping strategy, but of course it's maladaptive because especially with cutting, it could result in a severe injury or death. And then we have, so the intent is not to die.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's just to cope with the stress that they're dealing with, or even, maybe the depression or anxiety. But with suicidal ideations, they actually have thoughts of wanting to end their lives. The ultimate result is they want it to end. So that could, of course, result in death as well.
So can y'all share your perspectives on what are some of the factors that are contributing to the rise in suicide among school-age children and young adults? I know as an educator, as their teacher in the classroom, I know that they say that they feel academic pressure. They feel, I think social isolation was a really, really big deal for our kids, especially over COVID, and just the influence of social media. So like from y'all's professional points of view, what do you guys think are the contributing factors that?
It's all of those things. It's all of those things. So we think about looking back at COVID. COVID created a lot of challenges for us as a whole. And you think about as adults, we struggled with what that looked like.
Yeah.
We're traumatized regarding what we encountered during that time. So imagine our kids, them not necessarily having the skills that they need to be able to cope with what they're feeling and what they're going through, those feelings of isolation and loneliness, anxiety. We all have PTSD.
Yes.
You know, so what comes along with that is now we're placing them back in the schools where they had the opportunity for so long to be separate from the schools. Now they're coming back in. We have all of these stressors. We're asking them to be academically up to par. We're asking them to meet these measures, these standards that have been stated that you have to achieve this or pass these exams in order to be promoted. You know, it's so many different things. You're dealing with social media where they're looking at comparisons, why my life is not like this. Anxiety that just stems from just the things that are going on in the world as a whole. And we're not doing enough to equip our kids with the effective coping skills to be able to handle what it is that they're feeling.
I think you said something. I always say I have a whole list of things, and then y'all say something and I go all the way off topic, because when you said COVID and we're putting kids back into situations, and I think it's something very important that parents need to listen to. Even though they feel like at home their kids are adjusted and they're ready, they are not. I mean, I'm getting kids just now in 8th grade that are just now coming back to school full time from 2020. You know, when the world shut down, they kept them at home. Then they may have found, okay, when the school started opening back up, they said, okay, we're just going to do like a K-12 or some kind of online program or homeschooling program. And now the kids are 8th grade, 14 years old, and you're like, boom, here you go. But they were 4th grade when the world shut down. And you're expecting them to be like the rest of these kids. And so I remember the other day we had a pep rally. And it was like a volleyball, basketball pep rally or something like that. And one of my babies, who's just now coming back to school, had a meltdown. And me, because I've been, you know, in special education for so long, I'm not a diag, but I think that there's some other concerns there that we haven't recognized. It was way too much, and they had a complete meltdown. And so I'm able to recognize the signs, and I'm like, okay, come on, let's pull you out. Let's go find you a safe space to go. And I'm talking to them after, and they're like, I don't know. They're just having a full-blown panic attack and meltdown. The noise, the crowded people, it was just too much. And so then when you talk to parents, it's like, oh, no, they know I don't play. They'll be all right. And I'm like, no. Your baby wasn't ready for this. I think your baby should have been slowly acclimated back into this. But to just throw them and say, oh, well, it's time for you to be normal. Because guess what? These kids are getting ready to go to these 6A high schools next year, and you want them to be normal? Like, it's nah.
Right.
I thought about that when you said that. That just happened the other day.
Yeah, and the thing is, what is normal?
What is normal?
You know, because we're all adjusting to a new normal. You know, the world as we knew it pre-COVID doesn't exist anymore. And like you were saying, you know, some kids, they missed school and they had a hard time adjusting to working at home. But then you have the flip side of those students who that was the ideal situation for them.
Right.
Because they don't do well with crowds. They don't do well with the fast paced environment. And so when you place them back into that, they have to adjust. And like you said, the parent is under the impression, oh, just suck it up and deal with it. You know, you're 14, you're an 8th grader. But in reality, most kids are 2 years behind academically and development. You know, because part of our developmental growth is when they're socializing with their peers and they're learning how school operates.
Right.
You know, and that transition from elementary school to middle school is already tough enough. And so now you're just saying, jump back in there and do it. And
socialization, I think, is a big thing, because we look just social norms, social cues. And I'm like, wow, you can tell you've been sheltered. You can tell you've been at home and not around your peers, because do you not know that you shouldn't do this, or this isn't socially acceptable, what you're doing? And it could be the smallest things, like, this sounds so crazy, just blowing your nose out loud in the middle of class and then touching the door. And it's like, whoa. When we locked down, we kind of stopped all of that. But then you say something, they're like, what? And we're like, oh, you don't know. So some of those basic things that they missed out in 3rd grade, 4th grade, they're having to be taught all over again as, you know, 8th graders, 9th graders. And here's the thing, their peers never left school. So they're laughing at them. They are isolating them, even when they're in school. And so now you got the added stress of trying to adjust being back. But now I'm trying to make friends. I'm trying to fit in. And they're laughing at me. They think something's wrong with me. And I don't think anything. This is just my normal.
Right.
And so you putting that, compounding on top of other stuff they got going on. And now we got the depression, the anxiety. I got to go see the counselor every 5 minutes because they can't cope.
Right.
And so I think that's something we got to talk to parents and help them understand. Just because we thugged it out, this not the group that could thug it out like that.
Right.
So
they don't have the resiliency.
They do not. So I want to talk. We're gonna break this up into segments because there's so much I want to talk about with y'all today. But let's talk about the school dynamics first. So y'all know when we go to PD, I don't know about y'all. Know where I do PD. It's 20 minutes, something. We got an agenda. We got a projector in the cafeteria, and we got to hit these things, right? And sometimes the most important things are right before lunch. Mm-hmm. I'm checked out. Everybody checked out. We watching the clock because hurry up. Because if you said we got out here at 11:15 instead of 11:30, we can have an hour and a half of lunch. And so now I want you to speed through. And so one important thing that was sped through in the professional development I went to this summer was when they briefly touched on suicide, self-harm, and the other mental health aspects of it. So I want to talk about how we can help parents and how we can help parents by, thinking what support systems we can put in place at school to address the children's mental health issues and try to mitigate some of the risks that we're seeing with these babies. So, especially because some of our roles in some of the youth suicides and self-harm is kind of like, I don't want to say our fault, but it's a lot of pressure that we're putting on the kids. So what can we start doing as schools, as education professionals to help these parents? So let me ask you, Dr. Smith, how do you see schools playing a role in addressing the rise in the suicides in schools?
I don't feel the schools are doing enough. So we pride ourselves on being educators. Mm-hmm. However, we're not educating them on one of the leading causes of death for their age group, right? So suicide is one of those things that no one wants to talk about. Mm-hmm. I know in the school district that I am a part of, there was a conversation from a principal that stated we're in the middle. September is Suicide Awareness and Prevention Month. Mm-hmm. And counselors are doing the best that they can in order to educate students and parents. However, one principal states, oh no, I don't want this information posted in the school. Mm-hmm. I don't want our kids to see those things as they're walking through the hallway. But then I had to question, are you thinking more about the kids or are you thinking about you? Mm-hmm. Because in reality, it makes you uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. In reality, so instead of equipping kids with the information that they need in order to be able to make valuable decisions, we're thinking about ourselves for our own selfish reasons and our sense of comfort versus providing them with what they need. Mm-hmm. So as educators, we need to do a better job of, one, educating our staff on campuses, so that they know the signs, so that they know when you have little Johnny that's coming into the classroom every day and he's isolating himself, you see that his behaviors are shifting and changing, and he's abruptly sometimes angry and you don't understand why, or he's removing himself from all of the things that he traditionally would love. As an educator, you see those signs and you say, this may be something that I check in with Johnny about, or I connect Johnny with the counselor, or we come together and have a meeting with his parent in order to talk about what's different, what's going on with this child, and the reason why we're seeing these shifts and these changes in that way. But you have to be able to know what the signs are. Mm-hmm. As teachers, we're not stating that you're supposed to be the one that fixed Johnny. Yeah. Right? But teachers are the first individuals spend primarily the majority of their time with these students. Mm-hmm. You know when your babies are not right. Yeah. You know when their behaviors are shifting and changing. Absolutely. And the simple ask is just linking them with the appropriate resources. Mm-hmm. Being able to put out in the schools posters, when you're feeling this way, who do you reach out to? We have suicide hotlines and places that you can just text in order to get additional assistance and support.
Those signs are posted, but they're very tiny,
very
and they're in one spot in the building.
Absolutely. And we have to treat that like we would our sporting events and all of those things that we post around the school and we talk so much about. Mm-hmm. However, oh, we're going to talk about this only for the month of September or for this week long in order to say, oh, we checked this off the box.
That box.
But in reality, it's way bigger than that. The other component to it is parent education. As parents, we don't know what all the time to look for. I'm a mental health therapist, and I'm growing with my child, right? Because everyone envisions, oh, not my child. It can't happen to me or my child. You know, but in reality, we need to begin to think about when we see signs that are different for our kiddos. When they're withdrawing, when they're making comments, you look back on and say, wait a minute, that comment wasn't necessarily the most appropriate. What did you mean by that?
Right, let's talk about that.
Let's talk about it. Creating conversations that may not be the easiest for us as adults, but mean the world of difference for our kiddos.
I think going back to that comfortability, when you talk about putting signs like that in the buildings and principals being uncomfortable, I think in a lot of their minds, I know that's been the conversation in my campus, is that, well, we don't want to put an idea in their head that wasn't in their heads before. And it's like, oh, okay, but it's there because it's on social media. They're seeing it all the time. And it's on the TV shows. You got that. I never watch it because I don't like stuff like that. But the 13 Reasons or whatever. So they're seeing it. It's happening. So why can't we educate them? But then, you know, you get into the whole battle of curriculum and what you should be talking about. And the state says this and you can't do this. And the parents need to take care of that. But like you said, the parents are uninformed. So I know in some districts we have like parent universities and things like that. But guess what we're talking about? How to access Skyward. How to make sure the kid got all their fines taken care of so they can go to graduation. And not giving them the necessary tools that they need. I remember I was talked about this before, I was in an art maybe last year before last. And it was a new art facilitator. And we were talking about, it was a new baby that just came from homeschool and was having a very, very hard time just adjusting because they had never been to public school before. And the parent, second year, everybody's back open, just said, boom, go for it. And so we're in the art and we're talking. And at the end, the lady says, okay, well, here are a list of resources. And we have this new program and we can put their name on the waiting list and get this and that. And I said, I've sat in so many arts with you and I've never heard you give this information. I didn't even know these things existed, right? But then when you said our Black and brown babies, guess what? This baby was not a Black or brown baby. So I said, oh, this would be nice if all of the parents could have this same list of resources. Or I have some kids whose names I want you to put on that list too. Because what list? Who even knew that there was a list? I never even knew that there was such a program that existed within that school district because we weren't given that privilege. And so I think when we talk about education, we need to think of it for everybody because we're always given that. I talked about that this morning on social media, like the strong Black woman trope or the strong Black man trope. Y'all think that, oh, it's a part of their culture for them to be resilient and tough it out and deal through it. So we're just not even going to offer y'all the resources because y'all going to make it out. Y'all going to make it happen. Y'all going to find a way and figure it out. This baby over here is so delicate and dainty and sensitive and fragile that, you know, we have to give them everything. And I just think that's pretty jacked up. So I know by the time we're done with this conversation that I definitely want a list of resources for all parents to be able to access to help their babies. So let's go into specifics for challenges and pressures that kids are facing in school that are contributing to their mental health issues and their suicidal thoughts. Again, going back to old school, how we were raised, and we all Willow Ridge High School graduates, and resilience was just in our blood, right? That's just what we're taught. And so as parents, we're thinking, well, hell, why you can't be resilient too? Like, what's wrong with you that you're not resilient like me? Where you get the weakness from? We consider everything a weakness. And so we don't understand the stressors and the pressures that our kids are under at school. Because like you said, Ray, growing with your daughter, I had to grow through my daughter. My boys were so simple. But that little girl, I'm growing and learning with her. And so she really put me on to the mental health days. And I said, you know what? I got to think about it. If me as an adult will call in sick just because I need to rest, they need that too. And so now we've started incorporating a mental health day every quarter, every 9 weeks. And so even my son the other day said, Mom, I need a day. I'm just not feeling it. Of course, this was after we had the tragedy or issue that we had in the neighborhood the other day. He was just like, Mom, I can't do it today. And I'm like, all right, cool. So just the fact that they're starting to recognize signs, but the work load that's on these kids, the curriculum, the state pressure, like parents, they need to know what their kids are facing at school. So can y'all help us from the school aspect? What's going on in schools that has these babies feeling like they need mental health days, they need time to cope?
Okay. I'd like to go back to basically changing the adult mindset, because that is a huge factor, because the kids are, like you said, from the parent perspective, we're resilient. We did it, suck it up, do it. But we also have educators who have that same mindset. And we have educators, like you said before, I'm trained to teach the curriculum.
Right.
My job is to get them to pass this test. I'm not here to consider social emotional needs. And then also as adults, we such certain subjects are taboo. We're treating mental health and suicide ideations the same way we're teaching teenage pregnancy. We don't talk about it, or we scare them, and it doesn't happen. But the reality is, how many teen parents do we have?
Ooh,
I'm one myself.
Same.
And so it's the same with the suicidal ideation. We don't talk about it, and we talk around it. And of course, we don't want our kids to suffer, because then that reflects on me.
Right, as a parent.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And as a teacher, we have to stop asking what's wrong with these kids and start asking what have these kids experienced? What are they going through? And so when we start changing that mindset, we realize we can't teach these kids how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide if they are worried about, the social pressures, or mom is getting beat by dad at home, or mom and dad we're about to lose our house, and so we're telling them that their job is to be educated, but that's nonsense. They can't focus on curriculum, because they're dealing with all the things around them, and we have to consider that all these are little people,
right?
They're not children. They're not immune to what's happening around them, and so we have to be able to give them those coping strategies that they need so that they can focus on the academics.
It's that piece about being trauma informed. So kids are coming into the classroom each and every day, but teachers are not connecting with the fact of what kids are encountering in their day-to-day, right? So if you're not trained to be able to identify those things, and it's simple, hold a training for all staff members. It's simple, over the topic, in order to be able to address it. So when it's walking into your classroom, you come with a different lens of consideration, of empathy, because you don't know the person next to you. You don't have a clue of what their story is, right? So just being
even as
mindful,
adults, we don't know
exactly. So by being mindful of that, I may not have to know what happened, but knowing that each individual that's sitting in this classroom, they're a human being that comes with their own challenges and issues. I sat up there and I think about, in a 2-month time period last school year, on one campus, we had 3 students who had lost a parent just abruptly.
In 2 months.
In 2 months.
Jesus.
Right? I haven't encountered that as an adult, right? So can you imagine these kiddos that are having to go through this around prom time, around Mother's Day, where that's always challenging times for anyone that loses, loses a loved one. But then you're expecting them to come in here, because it's the end of the year. You have to take these exams. You have to make sure that you pass. You're going to get credit for this, or this may impact your graduation. All of these things. However, this baby just went through one of the most traumatizing things that an individual can encounter, right?
This baby barely got out of bed to come sit in here.
Hello? Right. This baby got up out of bed because the house was a reminder that mama or daddy is not here anymore, or what just occurred, or what I observed within the neighborhood itself. The school is my place, for some of these kids, my place of peace.
Yes, it is. And we are their place of peace as the educators. Some of them look forward to coming to our specific classrooms or seeing our specific faces, because we are that sign of peace. I want to go back to what you said about trauma, again, getting off my list, about being trauma informed. That's probably, I think, one of my biggest passions is true trauma informed instruction. That was another 15-minute hurry up, get in, get out of here. And it's like, no. This is so good. If the right person is doing the training and given the adequate amount of time to conduct the training, this could be so very good. But y'all can't speed through it. And one big piece of trauma-informed instruction is that I can train a room full of people to be trauma-informed, or what it means to be trauma-informed, or what it means to be empathetic. But if we don't remove some of the people that have these implicit biases within themselves, as our kids' educators, we can do trauma-informed instruction until the cows come home.
Right.
They're never going to see an issue with it because in their minds, it's not important. It's not an issue. It's not a struggle. Like you can make videos. We talked about last week. Girl, I got an eyelash just falling in my eye. We talked last week about the coaches. I don't know if you guys saw that video about that coach in Florida that was screaming in the boy's face and fist balled up, and it was just you clearly could see that he was raging. And so many men and women too, because I'm like, oh, y'all guys with Stockholm syndrome, something going on with y'all. We're like, well, I mean, that's the sport. Toughen up. That's how it goes. Back in my day, my coach killed me and brought me back to life, and I'm still okay, but you not.
Right.
You're not okay.
Yeah,
you are a messed up individual too. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so much we're normalizing that that was normalized for us growing up and as adults. We're expecting it to be normal for our kids, and they are just not built like that. And it's a new day and age. Just because we were beat with extension cord, not me, mama, not me. I don't want my mama to be like, hold up. But just, some of us are beat with extension cords and this and that. Doesn't mean that these kids have to go through that too. Because people are like, well, I turned out okay. We are not okay.
We're not okay. And that's the thing. We're comparing what we went through to what our kids are going through. And I say, I can't relate to what our kiddos are dealing with in current days because we did not have to deal with those things. We had our own stuff to deal with, but we didn't have the specifics of what they are currently dealing with. And that is creating such a huge amount of anxiety and stress within their lives, from the social media to, let's be honest, the shootings in the schools and all of these things where kids are having to encounter things that we never had to encounter.
Drills. Girl, having a drill gives me so much anxiety.
And what they don't realize, and yes, you have to prepare for the unknown, but all you're doing is creating more individuals that are struggling with anxiety, because every time that bell rings or sounds, it's creating that sense of anxiety for kiddos over, is this real? Or is this just practice? Right? So we have to be mindful of those things and be strategic on how we do things. Because if not, we're increasing the anxiety rate in kids. We're promoting, even when you mentioned a few minutes ago, and I don't want to miss that part of it, in these sports, in these organizations, and all of these things that our kiddos are a part of, you can provide structure. You can create great players and dancers and band band instrument players and all of these different things without killing the inside of who our kids are,
because that builds toughness. That makes them better people. I'm like, well, who taught y'all that?
It's tearing them down, and then you're seeking to try to find ways to build them back up.
Right. And my question is, why is it okay for that coach to get in that student's face, yell and scream, call them names, but yet when the student gets upset and they're yelling and screaming in the classroom, calling someone else's name, calling up their fist, oh, we need to assess this student with special education. No, they're modeling the behavior that the adults around them are exhibiting. So it's a definitely not a fair situation that we're putting kids in, because we're modeling that, oh, I'm just trying to make you a better person by yelling and screaming. Okay, well, why am I not trying to make my friend a better person by yelling and screaming at them?
Yeah.
So we have to model and we have to show them how they're supposed to act.
Yeah. I know when we talked a couple of weeks ago, our teenagers go to the same school, and we are having similar issues in different organizations, right? And so you mentioned that you offered to one of the coaches, like, hey, let me as a therapist, mental health therapist, perhaps I should come in and volunteer to do some type of classes or training or something for your parents and the kids, because I think your baby, major at something, I don't know, but body image and self-efficacy and self-worth and self-image is so important to these young ladies right now. And feeling like they're not making the weight to be, on the front line, or, my hair is not long enough, or I'm not pretty enough to be on the front, I'm put in the back. Just those little things that we don't think about, because, as coaches, whether you are a dance coach or flag twirler coach or whatever, you are thinking about the UIL score, the performance, the win, right? Even as an athletic coach. But you're not thinking about what you're doing to the kids in order to get that win.
Right.
And then even if you're putting your best of the best on the front line to get that win for you, what is that still doing to the best of the best? So after the best of the best gets that win for you, who goes back and fixes them inside?
Absolutely.
It's not your problem no more because you got that win. You got that 5 or whatever the scores are for
Right.
UIL. You got that score. But how much the schools push back on, like you said earlier, getting these people in to talk about these things, getting the resources in to talk about them, because in their minds, if we don't talk about it, it don't exist.
Right.
It's like, no, baby, I'm telling you as a mother, as an educator, I'm telling you these are the things that students are coming to me talking about. So let's do this. Because even if we talk to the biggest athletic directors in the school districts, right, around the greater Houston area, and we tell them this is an issue that needs to be addressed, get the people in. You have the people in within your own district to get these, to create seminars and programs to address these issues. Nah. And what I think pisses me off the most is that so many of these things are affecting kids of color.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not people of color that are leading them.
That part.
They're getting the win. They're getting what they need to get out of our kids, using our kids for the labor and, you know, their blood, sweat, and tears. And nobody cares about fixing them. Right. And I think that's just crazy. Anyway, I'm going on a tangent. So let's go back to signs. You said something earlier about like withdrawal and what kids are starting to do when things are not going right for them. What are some signs and behaviors that schools should be particularly vigilant about when it comes to indicating whether a student is struggling with their mental health or suicidal ideations?
So there's a variety of things. It looks different in every individual.
Yeah.
Right? So you have those that come and put on a show and a front at school, but at home, they're struggling, right? So it's not just one sign, one specific sign, because it could show up differently in individuals. But you have those students that withdraw from things, isolate themselves, where they traditionally would sit with peers. They begin to sit by themselves or interact, limit their interaction with others, shift in appetites, whether they're choosing to eat or not. Comments and statements that they make sometimes where you notice that they become a little bit more negative in the statements that they use, and darkness, journaling, and when you're as an educator, you're reading over their writing and you see the shifts and what they're communicating about, and or I know for the younger kiddos, they do a lot in their drawing.
Oh man.
And so it's being mindful when you give them topics in classrooms and things like that, to actually read them, to look at the work that they're turning in. Do you see a shift in how they're academically performing? It's a variety of things that, some to the point where you also see anger and aggression, which is not typical for this kiddo. It's like, what's going on with you?
Right.
Let's talk about it. I see a shift and change. It oftentimes is things that traditionally, are not typical for these students. And then they shift how they move and how they go about doing things. They're depressed, they're missing school, or they're skipping class. Those types of things where we look at it as they may be avoiding certain environments because they don't have the capacity to deal with it at that particular point.
Or certain environments are triggers for whatever they're going through at home.
Absolutely.
So I know you work heavily in the school system and you manage tons of schools within your district. And something she said earlier about the readings, it's in the work. And I joked on an episode before, joke but not really joking, how important it is, especially for like me, I'm an English teacher, right? To one, be mindful of the topics or the writing prompts that I am giving, and then making sure that I read them. And so I had an incident years ago, baby, you end up in depositions because it's like, well, this kid cried out in this writing, and it's like, yeah, so now even from that instance, I am very mindful of the length of essays that I assign, because I want to make sure that I'm reading every single thing, because I never want to be in that situation again, and I never want to be in a situation where a baby is crying out for help and I just said, oh, it's done, click, complete, check, here's your 100 and go. And so now this is just what I do. Yes, I'm going to give you a whole essay, but I have to now divide it up into chunks and I have to grade the chunks because I got to make sure that you're not crying out in your writing. Have you ever like encountered a situation where the babies are crying out in their writings or drawings?
Oh, definitely. In my current role, I'm more in an administrative role, but when I was a school counselor, we had kiddos who in their journals, they would write, and another thing I will caution teachers against is like, sometimes we have those journal writings that's more like free time, and they don't go back and visit what the kids have written. And so kids are drawing pictures and making serious outcries in those journals, but no one is reading them for weeks because it's just their free time.
There was a situation that happened maybe about a year or two ago with a counselor that I know, and it was linked to TELPAS. And I don't, of course, I've never done TELPAS, so I don't know how it's set up or anything like that.
It's hell.
But apparently, the baby made an outcry in her TELPAS writing, right? And it triggered something. And I never knew that this existed, where the campus was notified.
Oh, that happened to us
of what the child put.
By TEA.
Yeah. And so the counselor received the information. She called me about it, and she said it touched her so much because when she pulled the child and got the child into her room, the baby just started crying, and she said, "I was hoping that you would see this."
But on a state exam.
On a state exam.
That's crazy.
Because she's sitting in the building with the counselor, and she couldn't build up enough confidence in order to go and walk through those doors to tell the counselor what was going on. But, I can put this in my writing, and let me just hope that this is going to get back to her so that she knows that I'm struggling. Think about what that took for that baby to be able to do that, right? And how much joy she felt when that counselor came and pulled her and said, I was hoping that you were going to get this.
Right. And that's the thing, especially when students are struggling with suicidal ideation, it may not be blatant. We tend to look at the student who is boisterous and acting out, but normally it's just that kid that's sitting there and not communicating because they are afraid to speak up. And so you have to really know your kids.
Yeah.
That's number one.
The relationship, they hate when we say that, is build a relationship, they hate it, but it's like, y'all have no idea that's the end all be all.
Exactly.
That's it.
And then we talked about the structured writing, like, this baby made an outcry on, an essay, but they're also writing on the restroom walls, or they're also writing notes and slipping it to their friends,
or writing on themselves,
or writing notes and just dropping it, in the classroom or somewhere with the hope that someone will find it. So we really have to be on the lookout to see, what's happening. And unfortunately, I keep going back to this, but I think it's just so important, of the adult responsibility to change mindset, because sometimes kids are making blatant outcries, but we don't want to hear it because we're afraid.
Yep.
I was doing a counselor training, and a counselor, we were talking about suicidal protocol, and then counselor was saying, well, I'm tying my day up with students who are, making these outcries, and they're just trying to get attention.
Ooh.
And that's a problem. But if the student is using "I want to die" as an outcry, that in itself is a problem. A stable, normal, quote, air quotes, child is not going to say "I want to die" just to get attention. And so that is problematic.
Yeah.
And so, we're getting so frustrated with our schedules and how much time it's taking.
Centering ourselves.
Exactly. Work with these kids. We have to listen. What is that child communicating? Because behavior is communication.
Absolutely. And we talked before we started recording, but how the SEL, the social emotional learning, and I know in a lot of districts they have specific counselors for that role, and because a lot of those districts use the ESSER funds to put those people in positions, that's gone now.
Right.
And so now what do you do with those kids, those counselors that need those kids? And I know I was not joking, saying how, we may have a kid that is begging, like, where is, Miss Smith? Where is Miss Smith? And it's like, baby, Miss Smith not coming back to our campus until next Wednesday. In the meantime, they're in full crisis mode and needing Miss Smith, but Miss Smith is sharing herself, or, she's on the other side of town at 3 other different campuses for the day. 2 hours here, 2 hours here, 2 hours there, trying to address the more serious issues that these kids have, that their generic school counselor, either can't treat, or they've already started building a trusting or more trusting relationship with that social emotional learning counselor. And so that is who they are depending on. And so even going back to, we talked about this in several different episodes when we talked about the boys' mental health and the girls' mental health, the parents that can't afford those resources, right? So if I'm a parent that can't afford the resources of an outside therapist and my child won't talk to me, but my child has gained trust in talking to this individual, they only can talk to them 15 minutes every other week.
Right.
That's crazy. We have to do something better about that. But now with that going away, what do we do now? It's not a priority, and it should be a priority, because they want to say, well, we're doing, the different little, I don't want to say names so everybody know where I work, the different little programs that we do every other Monday during homeroom. And so we're teaching the kids, this is how you build character. And that's supposed to cover check off the SEL box. Baby, them kids hate that class. I hate that class. I hate homeroom every other Monday, because it's so goofy. It's so not relatable. It's so culturally irrelevant. They're so far removed from it. Right. And y'all spending how much money on this a year? On this curriculum a year, and saying, oh, this is what we're using in place of the actual therapist or the actual counselor that's on the campus to help the kids. And that's bananas. But
right. And definitely we need to shift the focus, because we are so focused on the academic piece. But again, they can't learn academically if their mental, socio-emotional and mental health is not together. And so we have to advocate as parents, because we know that parents are the ones who make things change happen. And so is it more important that they have this online curriculum that costs $1 billion, or we having that person who's able to be on that campus every day to provide those supports? So we have to shift that mindset and put individuals in place. But we also have to step away from, it's not my responsibility to know. It's not your responsibility to treat.
Right.
But it is your responsibility to know, because even if the teachers are aware and can communicate, because everyone involved in that student's life, from the bus driver to the janitor, to the cafeteria worker, we all need to be trained to know the signs so that we can communicate with the appropriate adult to get those students.
Because what if it's, and we have a sweet little cafeteria lady at my school, and when I say those kids love that lady because they say that lady reminds them of their grandmother, but what if she's the person that they are crying out to or confiding in, and y'all are telling her job is just to scoop the potatoes? But no, this is who this child is choosing to bond with and talk to. So why shouldn't they be all trained, or just like you said, look out for the signs? I think that's very important.
The big thing is we have to keep in mind that every individual that child comes in contact with has an impact on that child's life.
Yes, indeed.
So because of that, when we're thinking about how to create opportunities to make a difference within this arena, or any arena for that difference, is bringing everyone together and educating them, for everyone to be able to see the signs, to be able to identify, this is what it looks like. This may not be my role because I'm the cafeteria worker or I'm the custodian or whatever it is, but I see the signs and I know who on my campus that I can go to that's going to provide that level of support. It starts at the top. We have so many individuals that have all of these degrees and have all of this knowledge as it pertains to all of these things, and I'm doing the air quotes, because in reality, the biggest component of it is there's not too many that are focused on mental health and social emotional learning. You're focused about academics, and kids cannot perform academically if mentally they are not up to par.
Think about us as adults.
Absolutely.
I shut down quick, fast, and in a hurry. Absolutely. And I joke, but if you give me too many tasks, I'm not going to do any of the tasks because I'm overwhelmed. And the only way that I can get back into a clear mind or a clear space to think is to just shut down, do something for me. And now when I'm ready to, I'm going to go back and attack the task, at my leisure when I feel like it. Am I going to get in trouble? Absolutely. But am I stressed? Absolutely not. So I think we need to keep the same consideration for kids. So that's a lot of things with teachers. It's so many things that we can do in our rooms to push back against, rage against the machine and push back against the system to help our kids when we see that they're not helping. Me, I don't care about late work policy, baby. It's due Monday. I ain't grading till Friday anyway. Just make sure I have it before Friday. Because I know, girl, I got a kid in Argentina right now playing soccer. Like they get up and they leave. They have so much they have going on.
Mm-hmm.
And myself as a sports mom, I don't get home most nights until after 9:30. We leave in the morning for volleyball practice at 6:30. By the time I get through running around and doing everything, we're not dotting that dough again till 9:30. What do I look like putting extra homework and read this paper and write this? No, baby. These kids are tired. They're stressed. Mom and daddy working overnight shifts, so they're the mom and daddy at home. So they got to help the kids get the homework together. And now you come in fussing at them the next day because they don't have your homework. So some things that we can push back on as educators to help these kids alleviate some of the stressors that they have going on, because I think a lot of times they're gonna hate me for this teacher world, we are causing unnecessary stress.
Yes.
And it doesn't, it's very unnecessary. Okay, he giving me the time thing again. I always tease him about that, telling me I need to stay on topic. All right, so let me go to this next question I have for y'all. Are there any effective school-based programs or initiatives that you believe make a positive impact on their students' mental health and well-being? I know, like I mentioned that program, the $1 billion curriculum that we use every other Monday, which I think is garbage. But do you guys know of any school-based curriculums or programs that you've seen used in maybe your campuses or other campuses that you like, man, if we had something like that on this campus, this could really make a difference?
Yes, there's one, and I'm trying to be very
Vague.
yeah. It's one centered on hope. And what it does is it's a curriculum that teaches about suicide, just being suicide awareness and prevention. And what it does is it links and connects you with resources that are readily available in order to hold conversations with kids, right? So instead of just showing this video,
Exactly,
and then talking about the meaning
respond
of
to
it,
this prompt,
and all of this thing, it creates opportunities for open communication in the classroom for kids to feel comfortable enough to be able to share their thoughts and feelings about things, and it gives them that outlet. And that's the thing that we have to remember, is just creating a platform and an environment where kids feel comfortable, they feel seen, they feel heard.
they feel safe.
They feel safe,
Yeah.
right, in that environment, and that the individuals in that room is not going to use the information they shared against them.
Ooh, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that's going to bring me, it's really the last question I have, but let me draw myself a little arrow, because I got to make sure that we come back to that. I want to talk about y'all's roles as school counselors and as admins over school counseling. I know we talked and you said even the past several months and last school year on your campuses, you guys experienced suicide deaths among your students. And so let's talk about that and how that impacts, the kids that are close to that baby, the teachers that are with that baby, maybe some of the reasons. I know sometimes they leave notes or they leave hints and sometimes they don't, but from a school counseling aspect, when it's your student, let's talk about that.
Right. So in April, we lost a student on one of the campuses to suicide. This year alone, since the start of school in August, we've had 3 kids to make attempts, either prior to coming to school or at school.
At school.
Right? So what we have to keep in mind, us not talking about it, is not changing the behavior. It's not changing the pattern. And what you begin to see is one student does it, another student has been thinking about it. They see the response from the individuals around. So then it's, is this something that I really want to do?
Right.
So where we're thinking is saying, oh no, don't ever do those things. Instead, it creates a contagion. Right. Where now, oh, they did it. So let me do it.
And I have the courage.
I have the courage now in order to do it. So that's one of the things that ultimately we need to be aware of, that the impact of losing students on campuses is tremendous, right? It's great. You have to stop what you're doing and cater to, and not just cater, but provide the supports that are needed from kids that are grieving, from teachers that are grieving, administration that's grieving. You have to bring outside individuals in to support.
What do we call them? The crisis team?
The crisis support team to come in and provide support to a whole group of individuals, EAP included, to come and provide support to teachers because of the loss of this child.
And if that person is on the crisis team, that means they're not serving the kids that are at their school who might have something going on.
Absolutely. So it's a ripple effect, right? You begin to see that chain of event that happens, and you think about it. In those cases, and I'm not minimizing the loss. The loss is great. We just lost a student. This baby will never be able to do all of the things that the other kids are going to grow up to do, right? At the same time, we're stopping school in order to provide grief counseling for, in some cases, 2 to 3 weeks at a time. Right? Where instruction stops or is delayed. When we could have provided the instruction, the support on the front end, pause instruction just for a little while, in order to be able to give that baby included what it is that he or she needed to never have made that decision in the first place.
Absolutely. Because even with the incident that happened with on our campus, instruction was shut down Thursday, Friday.
Absolutely.
And it wasn't like a bad thing. I think even the teachers were just not in the mental space to feel like, I don't want to do curriculum today. And it was very somber, my baby said. It was just a somber day. And you could tell, even with him, just how drained.
The energy.
Yeah, just drained. And when you know your baby, you know my baby like me. And he was like, I just can't go. I can't do it again today. Because even that one day of how sad and emotional the day was, he's like, I know it's going to be like that again today, and I can't deal with that today.
Right. Don't have the capacity.
Right. And I think I would be irresponsible without bringing up this point. We need to free up school counselors so they can do the work that they're trained to do.
Come on, and not making them test coordinators.
Yes. And they have to determine, do I balance being available for these students or working on preparing for state tests or schedule changes. And, being in administrative
or duty
meetings
or duty. Yes. And that the counselor has morning duty, lunch duty.
Why?
After school duty. So when do they have the opportunity to provide counseling supports to students throughout the school day? They don't.
Right. And then again, if we free up that time, then it gives them the opportunity to be proactive and not reactive. Because once that baby is gone, that baby is gone.
Yeah.
And then we have to look at who are we going to, who could we possibly lose next if we don't put things in place.
Right. But we still won't I know we have an amazing counselor on our campus, and she's young and has so many great ideas. And I know a lot of times she's stifled in her growth, with what she can do. And I even told her, like, man, you have so much, you have such a gift. You need to start typing your gift and putting your gift in a box curriculum and start slanging your gift, because it makes no sense that you have so much to give to the area of mental health especially when it comes to Black girls, and you're being stifled.
Right.
And you're being stifled because we don't want to put the ideas in other kids' head. We don't want to create, I can't think of the name. When you said contagion, it reminds me of that. We don't want to create another situation like that where we're putting the ideas in people's heads and making them think about things that they weren't thinking about before, or making them feel like this is trendy, or like you said, oh, I see all the attention and all the ruckus this causes. Maybe I can get, when it's really what they wanted. Like, I really just want somebody to hear me and listen to me, but because y'all think I'm supposed to not be able to carry the burdens that are placed on me, or I'm supposed to be able to carry them well, you're not focused on me.
Right.
And so I think that's something. But last thing before we wrap up this segment, you mentioned earlier, I want to talk about policy changes or improvements that you would recommend for schools to better address the mental health needs of their students. And when I think about that, I think, because you said, like being a mandated reporter and kids crying out and people feeling like it's not their jobs to report something that they don't want another thing put on their plate when kids come to us that we have to go report. And it made me instantly think about all the drama going on with KDISD and the I can never get the acronym right, respectfully. And how, now that the kids, if a kid cries out to you or a kid tells you, hey, I prefer to use this pronoun, or I think I may be having these type of feelings toward the same sex, you as the educator have to tell their parent. And I don't think, because, we know Katie is Katie, they don't understand how detrimental that them passing that rule is going to be when it comes to student mental health, and how some of those kids, they get to come to school and be who they want to be, and when they go back home, they have to put on a performance, and they dare not get caught out of performance by their parents, and or because it could be life or death for them at home when it comes to that too. But just the fact that we're telling these kids they can't be who you are, just something as simple as me, I'm easy breezy, easy like Sunday morning. You want to be called what, baby? Bet, got you. Have a seat, duly noted. Because it's no sweat off of my back. Right. But telling a kid, you don't respect this or you can't do this. Okay, y'all know what y'all creating, right? And so anyway, what policy changes or improvements did you guys recommend that would help us not to have this be such a prevalent issue, a prevalent occurrence as it is?
I think, one, we need to put the appropriate people in place. We often complain about the school boards because they are business people and not educators. I think it's the same thing. We need mental health professionals who are on those boards who are making decisions, because adults are making decisions based on their religious beliefs, their personal beliefs, and it's financial, yeah, definitely. And so it's more like business decisions than actually looking at those students as individuals. So we need people who aren't afraid to speak up and say, hey, let's consider how this is going to impact that child's life. And so when policies are put in place, we as parents and as educators have to use our voice and speak up against those things.
And I think that's something, trying not to go off topic, but anyway, a lot of us, I'm pointing to my skin, when we feel like we've made it in certain areas, in certain school districts, we're hands off. Because it's like, well, no, my kid goes to KDIZ and my kid's playing in a $1 billion stadium. And I mean, y'all need to just try to do what y'all need to do to get like me. And it's like, okay, all that, be all that as it may. Do you know what your kid's going through over there? Do you know what's going on in there? No. Do you know what kind of policies and regulations are being made for your child? Because you're hands off now, because you feel like all the decisions that are being made are in the best interest of children. That's what you're thinking. But they're not in the best interest of your children or children that look like your children.
I've had this conversation so many times before, and what I had to comment to someone about that made those similar statements is, white doesn't make it right, right? As a Black parent, I feel that my husband and I are very established, right? We're doing well for ourselves. However, one of my babies attends a school that is clearly Black, right? Why? Because I know that he's going to be taken care of and covered by the Black teachers and the principals and stuff that are going to pour into him and love on him. In reality, we have to stop assuming because we're sending our kids to certain schools that's in the best interest of our kiddos, because it's not. Right? But that's what we've been trained. That's what we've been told, right? Because they have the resources. They have the equipment. They have all of the things that maybe some of our other schools don't get the opportunity to get. Why? Because they're in the wrong location, the wrong zip code, but in reality of it, we need to stop looking at it like that and doing what we can to pour into all of our campuses, equipping them with what it is that they need in order to be successful.
Don't get me started, because it's like, you got that on one end, and then we go to our other babies and where they are. And I'm like, Lord, please let 2025 hurry up and come here, because my goodness. All right, so we're going to wrap up this segment, but I want to come back with a second segment because I know you guys have a foundation dedicated to this topic, and I want to go into detail talking about that. So we'll wrap up this segment and come right back. So thank y'all for joining us. Sit tight. This podcast was made possible by producer extraordinaire D. Francis at the legendary Lab 7 Studios in Mo City, Texas.